People who grew up in the 1970s were not raised the way you think. They were raised in a world where no one was watching, no one was guiding, and no one was coming to fix things for them. You disappeared for hours, sometimes the whole day, and the only rule was simple: be home before dark. No phone, no tracking, no constant check-ins. Just you, your decisions, and whatever consequences came with them. And that kind of childhood does something to the brain. It builds a level of independence that's hard to replicate today. There's this quiet voice inside them that says, "I'll figure it out," even when they have no clear plan. But the real foundation of their psychology goes deeper than freedom. It comes from the people who raised them. Most of their parents were shaped by World War II or its aftermath. These were individuals who didn't talk much about feelings. Not because they didn't have them, but because survival had trained them to move forward, not dwell. They worked, they endured, and they handled problems without turning them into discussions. And children growing up in that environment absorbed everything. They watched stress being managed silently. They saw responsibility being carried without complaint. And without realizing it, they internalized the same patterns. This is why people from the 1970s matured earlier. Responsibility wasn't introduced to them later in life. It was always there. You fixed things when they broke. You helped without being asked. You learned to solve problems because there was no alternative. Over time, this created a mindset where stability came from within, not from external support. They didn't grow up expecting help. They grew up becoming it. At the same time, they lived in a slower world. There was space to think, space to get bored, and space to interact without distraction. Social life wasn't filtered through screens. It was direct, sometimes rough, but real. That environment trained their attention in a completely different way. They're not used to constant stimulation, which is why they can sit with things longer, think deeper, and stay grounded when everything around them speeds up. Now compare that to people born after the 2000s. This generation grew up in constant connection. Information, entertainment, and social validation are always one tap away. Their brains are processing more in a single day than previous generations did in a week. And while it has made them more aware and more informed, it has also made them more mentally exhausted. Attention is fragmented. Rest is interrupted. And even silence feels uncomfortable because the mind is used to constant input. This doesn't make one generation better than the other. It highlights how different environments shape different minds. People from the 1970s developed resilience through independence and real-world exposure. Today's generation is learning to adapt to speed, pressure, and overload. But the difference is clear in how they respond to life. One slows down and handles it. The other is constantly trying to keep up. People who grew up in the 1970s carry something that's hard to teach, a grounded kind of confidence. Not loud, not performative, just steady. They trust themselves because they had to, and that trust stayed with them. Their psychology wasn't built in comfort. It was built in real conditions, without filters. If this gave you a new way to see things, make sure to subscribe. There's a lot more we're breaking down next.